And now it's my honor to introduce our distinguished speakers who are at the forefront of this transformational work. Diana Mickevičienė, Ambassador of Lithuania to India, and Olena Ilchuk, Third Secretary, Consular Department, Embassy of Ukraine in India. Ladies and gentlemen, a huge round of applause for the ladies.
Ambassador Diana, Olena, SheShakti 2025 में आप दोनों का बहुत बहुत स्वागत है. मैंने सुना है आप दोनों की हिंदी बहुत उत्तम है. Ambassador?
उत्तम नहीं, थोड़ा सा.
Olena? जी.
इनविटेशन के लिए बहुत धन्यवाद. हम विश्वविद्यालय से हिंदी सीखे इसलिए हमें हिंदी भी आती है.
आपने पहले ही दिल जीत लिया इस पूरी महफिल का. एम्बेसडर डियाना, सबसे पहले तो ये पूछना चाहूंगी, भारत और लिथुआनिया के बीच में क्या समानताएं हैं? आपने भाषा के बारे में काफी बातें की.
हाँ, भाषा के बारे में बोल सकती हूँ. काफी समानताएं हैं. लैंग्वेज, हमारा भाषा, लिथुआनियन भाषा, it is considered that it's the closest living sister language of Sanskrit. ये बहुत प्राचीन लैंग्वेज है और इनमें जो स्ट्रक्चर है, जो ग्रामर है, तो बहुत समानताएं है संस्कृत के पास है. And I think if I can switch to English, because in front of such an audience I'm a little shy to speak my broken Hindi. I have to say that generations of Lithuanians grew up with an idea of being somewhat spiritual relatives of India because of that linguistic connection. And so many people, even in those times when it was impossible to travel or very difficult to travel, you know, this linguistic commonality was an inspiration. Like we have a guy who came to India on motorbike in 1929, imagine, just because he wanted to study that linguistic connection.
And you studied in the national capital too over here in Delhi.
Yes.
For all our audiences. Olena, भारत और यूक्रेन के बीच की कुछ समानताएं हमसे शेयर करिए.
I would say this is post-colonial experience because भारत के लोग ब्रिटिश के रूल पर काफी बहुत समय बिताए हैं और अभी भी इसका प्रभाव बहुत रहता है और यूक्रेन में we also endured we also suffered during Soviet era and we're still suffering, so that is the thing what unfortunately unites us.
The post-colonial identity.
Exactly. And to switch to a more positive note, I would also wanted to mention Bollywood and Indian movies because जब मैं स्कूल में पढ़ती थी तो
Who are your favorite actors?
बहुत ज़्यादा. पुरानों में से राज कपूर, वहीदा रहमान, नरगिस, वैजयंतीमाला, बहुत ज़्यादा. सुनील दत्त, थैंक यू.
और आज की जनरेशन के?
Sorry?
In the current generation?
In current generation, आधुनिक में से तो बिल्कुल शाहरुख खान, आमिर खान, आयुष्मान खुराना, दीपिका पादुकोण, ऐश्वर्या राय.
Which was the last movie you watched?
Tapar, I think Tapar, with Tapsi Pannu.
Okay. Since we are here to also discuss and spark a conversation about women in diplomacy, Ambassador Diana, I have certain unsettling figures to share with you, which have in fact been put out in the public domain by the United Nations. Since 1947, only 7% of all ambassadors are women. 73 countries have never appointed a female representative. And as of 2024, women made up only 21% of UN permanent representatives. Of course, why so? But I'm sure you agree that women are specially positioned when it comes to the process of global peacekeeping missions. And yet, why do we not find them in high-ranking diplomatic positions?
I wish I knew the answer, Akanksha. We keep on asking ourselves the same question again and again. Even though I have to admit, when I joined the diplomatic service 3 decades ago, a woman ambassador was a very distant, perspective, probably caused by an accident rather than, by a trend. Now, the figures you have quoted, they are correct. In some countries, they might be higher. And we could look at the Delhi scene. We have about 180 diplomatic missions in Delhi, and we have about 30 heads of missions, women, female heads of missions. It by and large reflects the same statistics that you have quoted, and I keep on asking ourselves, and especially we felt maybe 10 years ago that we have broken that glass ceiling. I'm so happy to see so many women in all walks of life, like in the panel before, which I had the pleasure of listening. It's so impressive. It's so amazing in India and everywhere else. And yet, if you look at the boards, if you look at the ambassador rank level, if you look at the negotiation tables around the world, it's all youths, right? You don't really see so many of women. Therefore, I think the glass ceiling has been shifted higher up, but it has not been broken. So we have to continue asking ourselves why women prove themselves to be so excellent professionals, and yet they are not at the top with a natural ease. So my assessment is that the glass ceiling has been shifted by that collective power of women and men, I have to say, because it has to be the joint effort. But it has not been shattered so far.
Olena, we on the stage represent 3 different generations of women, and you happen to be a young diplomat. Is there any change that you see happening at your end?
Well, I'm only starting my professional journey, so I cannot say I faced any particular issues till this moment. But over the past decade, situation significantly improved, and in particular in Ukraine as well as in India, there is women diplomats, women ambassadors, women ministers, and as an example, recently Prime Minister of Ukraine has been appointed, Yulia Sviridenko, who before that she was Minister of Economy. So I wouldn't say it's impossible now to face so-called glass ceiling, but I think this problem can also be not only external, but of inward nature as well. Because many women underestimate themselves, they may feel inferior comparing themselves to their male colleagues. And this problem is acknowledged in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Ukraine. We have mentorship programs, and we have a women's diplomatic lab as well.
Ambassador, that's a very critical point that she's just now raised. How can we ensure greater representation of women in diplomacy? Is it through greater awareness programs, mentorship, quotas also, as some have suggested, and how to ensure a harassment-free environment for women to function?
Well, I think, again, it depends on the context of a country. Harassment is not exactly the main problem. I think the main problem is work and life balance. It's a woman who thinks twice before subjecting her family through a lot of pressure and rush, at least in Europe. It's not because of harassment or some harsh conditions. It's because if a man is on a career path, his path is insulated from family worries mostly, right? And the woman has to care about children, about the elderly in the family, and that's where the whole pressure comes in. It's not that somebody discriminates you, but in the society, the jobs, the responsibility for different types of, work that you have to do has to be spread equally. I'm also very lucky to see so much of change. My husband shared with me my maternity leave. I mean, it became a paternity leave. In Lithuanian law, you can share it. So I took one half, which was 1 year. He took another half, which was another year. He absolutely enjoyed being with the baby, and it made him a different father. So we don't have any questions about sharing, but I don't know if my family is like a standard family. I suspect not yet, but the shift is happening. But quotas, or at least if it's not strictly quotas, but some sort of, fair competition where both genders have to be equally represented at that sort of initial level before taking a decision is very, very important. And every office, every diplomatic office, but any office by and large has to do that. But then the woman thinks twice before assuming responsibility.
That's
right?
heartwarming to hear.
And I guess she also thinks twice before, critically evaluating her ability to deliver, because, very often admit if a man fails, it's because, humans do fail. If a woman fails, people say, oh, it's because she was a woman. That's the judgment that society, gives on us. So we have to change that.
Olena, your country is going through tremendous hardships. Millions of lives lost, millions, in fact, children and women displaced. What defines the resilience of the women in Ukraine at the moment?
Well, many women have fled to other countries to defend their children, to save them from constant shellings. This is extremely difficult nowadays to become an immigrant without planning, because most of those women, they would not leave the country if not the war. It is extremely difficult nowadays, and the women who are trying to move on with their usual lives, with working, with handling studies, handling families, children, parents, this is extremely challenging to do in breaks with those challenges.
Do you think that the US president has given an upper hand to the Russian president in the ongoing negotiations for a prospective peace deal? Because he says that Russia comes from a position of power which Ukraine is not. He's always compared the two countries and said that Ukraine will have to consider giving land concessions. Your thoughts?
While Putin was in Alaska, Ukraine was still bombed. So this is everything you need to know about so-called diplomatic efforts of Russians. More to that, over the past almost 400 years, we have a lot of agreements with Russians which have failed between our nations, because Russians do not stick to what they promise. And now you see the result of those long-time agreements and treaties. If you only scratch the surface of this situation, of this war, it may seem that this is a war over territories, which is also true, but if you dive deeply into this matter, if you research history, you will see that this is actually an existential war. Russians cannot stand the idea of Ukrainian identity, Ukrainian language, Ukrainian mentality, Ukrainians being a different nation and having their own territory. So this is why we not only we defend our territories, we defend people who live on those territories. And this is also very important to mention, that if this conflict will be frozen, this will not be a solution to the problem, because hot war will become silent genocide, as it was in the Soviet era, as it was a long time ago. Think of Holodomor, man-made famine.
I'm running short of time. I want to quickly bring in Ambassador Diana on that note. Ambassador Diana, how do you speak to Russian fears, something that's been highlighted by the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, that on the issue of land concessions, what is the guarantee that NATO will not come closer to Russia, and how do you speak to those Russian fears?
You just need to ask yourself honestly, why NATO coming to the borders is a threat? Who was the last country who has attacked Russia? And if you study history, it's in fact 1969, and it was China. So there is no way of assuming that, NATO coming to the border would definitely mean the attack on Russia. On the contrary, it's Russia who attacked Moldova in 1992. You have a frozen conflict in Transnistria. Russia has attacked Georgia in 2008. You have a frozen conflict where you have two self-proclaimed but de facto Russian-controlled territories, Abkhazia and South Ossetia. And then you had 2014, where Russia came and grabbed Crimea. Again, you know, self-proclaimed independence and joining Russia. So in fact, the scenario is very opposite. You just need to study history. And in fact, I also want to speak about that, you know, temporary or sort of having to put up with a loss of territory scenario, which was invoked by a few leaders recently. We feel very strongly about this because Baltic states were sacrificed. You know, the Second World War ended, and it was a world war. Even for India, it was a world war because so many Indian soldiers were, you know, fighting without a proper asking even. You know, I'm a student of Indian history, so I'm aware of that. But it didn't end for us because our so-called liberator Soviet Union chased away the Nazis and stayed over. So we were swapped. And what happened? We had 50 years of, you know, we lost 1/5 of our population. We had our children exiled and their identity stolen. Thousands of children never came back. This is what's happening to Ukrainian children.
That's why I want to allude to what Prime Minister Modi said, that it's not an era of war and the solution doesn't lie on the battlefield. Olena, is there a message for Prime Minister Modi that you'd like to send?
First of all, I wanted to say a huge thank you on behalf of Ukrainian people and express a huge gratitude for humanitarian aid which was provided to Ukraine. And with all my love to India, I would, and people of Ukraine would be very happy to see India moving from neutrality to more clear and more firm stance in this matter. India has to reaffirm its support to Ukrainian sovereignty and territorial integrity. Also, its support and efforts regarding post-war reconstruction and demining would be very much appreciated. And India is definitely a global South leader, and we need more nations on the right side of history. Bahut dhanyavad.
I'm running short of time, but I want to end on a resilient note. And so I'd like to inform our audiences today that both Olena and Ambassador Diana are known for their co-recital of Shri Harivansh Rai Bachchan's Agnipath. Let's have it.
This is definitely one of my very favorite poems of all that I have read, in fact. So with great pleasure. So shall I start, right? Agnipath, Agnipath, Agnipath. वृक्ष हो भले खरे, हो गने, हो बरे, एक पत्र चान भी मांग मत, मांग मत, मांग मत. अग्निपथ, अग्निपथ, अग्निपथ. तू ना थकेगा कभी, तू ना थमेगा कभी, तू ना मुड़ेगा कभी. कर शपथ, कर शपथ, कर शपथ. अग्निपथ, अग्निपथ, अग्निपथ.
ये महान दृश्य है, चल रहा मनुष्य है, आश्रु श्वेत रक्त से. लथपथ, लथपथ, लथपथ. अग्निपथ, अग्निपथ, अग्निपथ.
Thank you for making that promise. तू ना थकेगा कभी, तू ना थमेगा कभी, तू कर शपथ, तू कर शपथ, तू कर शपथ. Agnipath, Agnipath, Agnipath. It was a pleasure having you here. Ladies and gentlemen, let's have a huge round of applause for these two wonderful, very brave women.